Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Meetinghouse of Provincetown, where we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and where we support each other on our spiritual search for truth and meaning. My name is Reverend Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you have joined us this morning. Welcome to those of you in the room, and methinks there were some people who did not want to get wet this morning, who might be watching the live stream in their sweatpants while drinking coffee. It's okay, we're not jealous. But welcome also to those of you joining us on our live stream. Before we begin our worship service, I have just a few announcements to share. There is still time to sign up for our new member class. It's filling, so I'm so thrilled, but we always have room for more. And it's going to be this Thursday, November 17th, from 10 a.m. to 12:30 on Zoom. If you have been attending or tuning in on YouTube and feel like you've found some kindred spirits here, we would love to welcome you to our community more formally. Email or call the office to sign up, office@uumh.org. Next Sunday, we are bringing back the tradition of our Gratitude Labyrinth out on our front lawn. Karen Pagano and some fabulous teens are going to be painting this ancient spiral design for us to walk in the spirit of thankfulness for our many blessings. And you are invited to bring a canned food item to leave along the labyrinth for our little free pantry. And we hope to outline the entire labyrinth with food items. And there are flyers downstairs with more information and a list of the most needed items. And kids, next Tuesday, students from the Provincetown schools will also be walking our labyrinth. So we're so excited that you can come back on Tuesday and leave canned food items, not this week, but next week. And townsfolk are also welcome to participate, so please spread the word. Speaking of our lawn, it's a wee bit wet out there, so we will not be having coffee hour today. We usually have it outside. But all of you are invited to attend our Zoom coffee hour Tuesday at 5 o'clock. We talk about the question of the week, and we also share a time of joys and sorrows with one another. So let us know if you need that link. And now let us continue by affirming our community's covenant. And I invite you to repeat each line after me. Love is the spirit of this meeting house. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. At this time, I invite Jen and Shar to light our chalice for us. And as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you watching online to light a candle wherever you are, and that way we can feel connected even while we are apart.
Thank you, Shar. Today's chalice lighting. Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are 100 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Rumi.
Thank you. Please join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation. If you have a joy or a sorrow on your heart this morning, you are welcome to light a silent candle during the prayer, or really at any time during the service at the table to the right of the pulpit. And there is a journal there to record your thoughts and prayers. After our prayer, we will sing together, Spirit of Life. You can find the music in the Singing the Living Tradition hymnal, number 123, or you can find the words on the purple laminated cards in the pews. This morning's prayer is a metta meditation practice. Now, metta is a Pali word for benevolence, friendship, affection, and kindness. Loving kindness meditation, or metta meditation, is a practice of extending generous and selfless love towards others. So I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. You can close your eyes if you want to. And summon a little tenderness for yourself this morning. We're going to start by sending some loving kindness to ourselves. You can repeat these phrases silently to yourself after I say them. May I be strong. May I have the power to accept and forgive. May I live and die in peace. May I be safe. May I love and appreciate others boundlessly. Now I invite you to bring to mind someone that you love, and holding them in the center of your thought, repeat these phrases silently to yourself after I say them. May you be safe. May you live long. May you achieve what you want and deserve in life. May you have the power to accept your anger and your sadness. May you be healthy and happy always. Now I invite you to bring to mind someone that you have a difficult time with. Can you think of anyone? Place them in the center of your thought. Try saying silently to them, may you be safe. May you live long. May you achieve what you want and deserve in life. May you have the power to accept your anger and sadness. May you be healthy and happy always. Now I invite you to return to the in and out of your breath. I invite you to open your eyes if you have closed them. And we will sing together, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Root hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla al volar, sube en la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Aréngame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
In today's sermon, Rev Kate will be drawing on the work of Toni Bernhard. In the foreword of her book, How to Be Sick, a Buddhist-inspired guide for the chronically ill and their caregivers, Toni shares this story. The inspiration to write this book came from a person I knew such a short time and in such limited circumstances that I don't even know how to spell her name. In 1999, I was on a 10-day silent meditation retreat at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. As always on retreat, each of us had what's called work meditation, meaning we are responsible for performing a task each day to help the retreat run smoothly. Some people cut vegetables, some wash dishes, others clean the bathrooms. As much as possible, we maintain silence even if we work alongside others. My work meditation was to clear the trays from the serving tables in the dining hall after lunch and to put away the leftovers. I shared this job with a woman who introduced herself as Mary Ann and was about my age. She looked a bit frail to me, but we shared the work equally, only speaking in a whisper now and then. Is this container big enough for the extra salad? In the meditation hall, I noticed that she seemed to be with a young man who might be her son. I remember thinking how nice it was that they were together. She had a kind face and a gentle smile, and I look forward to seeing her every day after lunch. In addition to working in the dining hall, we followed a path to the small building where the teachers ate, and we brought their serving trays back to the kitchen. On the 7th day of the retreat, to my surprise, another woman accompanied Mary Ann. The three of us cleared the serving tables in the hall And then the new woman followed me outside as I began to walk down to the teacher's dining room. She asked, "Do you know about Mary Ann?" When I looked, I shook my head. She told me she's very sick. She only has a couple of weeks to live. Then I turned around and went back into the dining hall. I continued to the teacher's dining room, shaken by this unexpected discovery. There on the path was one of the teachers. In my distress, I broke the silence. I asked her if she knew about Mary Ann. She replied that Mary Ann was here with her son. Then she told me something she probably shouldn't have, which is why I'm not using her name. She said that on the information sheet we fill out when we get to the retreat center, under the question that asked if there's anything the teachers should know about us, Mary Ann had written, "I have just 2 weeks to live, but it won't affect my practice." The next day, Mary Ann's spot and her son's spot in the meditation hall were empty. In memory of Mary Ann, I vow to do my best not to let my illness affect my practice. I also vow to let my practice continue to teach me how to be sick and to enable me to help others who are chronically ill, as well as those who care for them.
Thank you. Now is the time in our service where we take a collection for the ongoing support of this meeting house and our shared ministry. As we enjoy a musical reflection, we welcome your donations here in the sanctuary or online through PayPal or Venmo. You can find that information on our website, uumh.org. On and off site, your offerings will now be gratefully received.
Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes, with love or hate we build a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all. Many holes make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Thank you. In 2001, Toni Bernhard was beginning her 20th year as a law professor at the University of California at Davis. To celebrate, she and her husband, also coincidentally named Tony, decided to go on a special vacation. They rented a studio apartment in Paris and prepared to have a 3-week adventure of a lifetime in the City of Lights. The beginning of the trip was rocky. Sitting on the plane at the airport, they noticed that things were taking a lot longer than usual. Shouldn't they be in the air by now? Mechanical problems. Quickly checking in with one another, Tony and Tony decided to get off the plane with their carry-on luggage and run to the ticket counter before anyone else in order to find another flight. Success! They ran through the airport and just made it as the very last passengers on another flight that had already boarded and did not have any mechanical problems. They were very proud of themselves. We'd been so much smarter than the other passengers, Tony writes. By the time we left the United Airlines counter with our TWA tickets in hand, the others who'd been on our flight had formed a long line behind us. Ah, pride. Caution, caution, the Buddha would have said. But they were so pleased with themselves. Only later, when several doctors concluded that it was likely on that flight that Tony contracted the virus from which she never recovered, did she change her perspective on that. Her first day in Paris, Tony didn't feel well, but she attributed it to jet lag. The day after that, she felt awful. Perhaps it was the flu. 3 days passed and she felt no better. No big deal, they still had 18 days left in Paris. After a week, they said to each other, "No big deal, we still have 2 weeks left in Paris." But the days dwindled and dwindled. Tony spent the days in bed in their tiny studio apartment while her husband, Tony, explored the city, bringing little treats back to her. It wasn't much fun for either of them. They went to the hospital, but the doctors simply advised that she had the flu and that a few more days in bed and a prescription for antibiotics to keep it from turning into a bacterial infection, and she would be right as rain. She spent the rest of the trip watching the French Open on the small television at the end of the bed. Language didn't matter in tennis, and she disappeared into the game, which brought her some relief. Now, I won't go into her entire medical journey because our time together is short, and also because I want you to read her book, How to Be Sick. But let me summarize by telling you that in the end, she saw 3 infectious disease doctors, 2 ear, nose, and throat doctors, a rheumatologist, an endocrinologist, a gastroenterologist, a neurologist, a cardiologist, and 2 acupuncturists. And all the tests said that there was nothing wrong with her, except that she could not get out of bed, could not walk across the room without being overcome by fatigue, could not drive herself places. She tried to continue teaching at the law school, her husband driving her to class and picking her up. She taught sitting in a chair, but she was too exhausted even to make it to the bathroom down the hall when she needed it. And soon she had to take a leave of absence from which she never returned. You know, it's funny that in that brief time period when she taught while being ill, Tony received the highest evaluations from her students that she'd ever received in her 20 years of teaching. And it wasn't a sympathy vote. She was a better teacher. Being sick, she said, I was unable to be anyone other than my unadorned self in the classroom. It was easy to admit that I didn't know the answer to a question. I had new compassion, both for people caught up in the legal system and for the students facing struggles in their personal lives. Although her diagnosis remains somewhat unclear, in the simplest terms, Toni Bernhard has chronic fatigue and viral-induced central nervous system dysfunction. Her journey of the last 21 years has been not to heal, but to adjust. She has drawn deeply on her Buddhist practices of meditation, mindfulness, and reframing suffering to get her through. A particularly rich theme for her to sink into has been the first noble truth of Buddhism, which is often translated as, life is suffering. It sounds awful in English, doesn't it? But in Pali, the word the Buddha used is dukkha, which doesn't exactly translate to suffering. It's more nuanced and multifaceted than that. It means unsatisfactoriness, discomfort, unease. It means that painful experiences are part of the human condition. It doesn't mean that life is only made up of unpleasant experiences. Happiness and joy are available too. But they are more available when we recognize that, in the words of the Taoist sage Chuang Tzu, life is the realm of 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. Toni Bernhard says, when we react to life's unpleasant experiences by launching a militant battle against them, for example, by denying that we're chronically ill, or by turning away in aversion from the need to grieve our losses, we create dukkha, suffering, stress, dissatisfaction. We also create dukkha when we expect to only have pleasant experiences, even though no one's life is pleasant all the time. In short, when we're unable to accept that our lives will be a mixture of joys and sorrows, pleasantness and unpleasantness, successes and disappointments, we make things worse for ourselves because we're adding dukkha to the mix. You can argue with the way things are, Byron Katie says. You'll lose, but only 100% of the time. I read Toni Bernhard's book, How to Be Sick, with my study group of UU colleagues. I told you about that group last week. The person in the group who recommended the book to us is my friend Rob. In 2020, in the earliest days of the pandemic, Rob contracted COVID. And he is one of the 6% of people who developed long COVID due to the virus. He experiences many of the same symptoms as Toni Bernhard: chronic fatigue, shortness of breath, loss of concentration and critical thinking skills. He can work just 1 to 2 hours a day now, and he struggles to keep up with his 2 active teenage children. To drive to our study group from New Jersey, he had to get a hotel halfway here and spend the night because he can no longer make the journey in one go. For our study sessions, we dragged a couch into the circle so that he could participate lying down. Rob connected with the book deeply. So did I. The Buddhist techniques she offers in the book for managing illness are so helpful to me in my adjustment to having a neurological disorder that is sometimes visible and sometimes invisible. But really, almost everyone in our study group connected with the book in one way or another. They wrote about myriad illnesses and experiences, some short-term, some long-term, and some about being caregivers. Everyone related to the topic because we all live in bodies. Take a second to remember that you live in a body. Sometimes our bodies fail or challenge us. And the strongest tool that we have to move through illness and pain is not medicine or physical therapy or diet. It's our mind. Now, you might think that a book called How to Be Sick would be depressing, but I didn't find it so. I found it so inspirational and hopeful. I found it helpful. So I want to share just a few of the most helpful bits with you this morning in case you don't buy the book for yourself, but you should. And by the way, you don't have to be chronically ill for these things to be helpful to you. The practices that Tony shares allow us to be more considerate and empathetic to others who are facing chronic illness. And they also help us in many areas of our life where we might be adding to our suffering where we don't have to be. This goes back to that dukkha thing. In fact, let me start right there, because we are really pros when it comes to suffering unnecessarily. We are. Have you ever heard that phrase, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional? At a workshop that Tony attended many years ago, Aya Kima, a German Jew who, after escaping the Nazis, became a Theravada Buddhist nun in Sri Lanka, said to the attendees, "Thoughts are just there, like the air around us. They arise, but are arbitrary and not reliable. Most of them are just rubbish, but we believe them anyway." Now, we think things like, I'm not going to be any good at this. She doesn't like me. All my friends have abandoned me. We have nothing in common. My life would have been better if only this never would have happened to so-and-so. He should have called me. I've been really wronged here. Now, these are not facts. We treat them as facts, but they are not facts. They are thoughts. And while our minds are our very strongest tool for surviving and thriving, they are also our worst enemy a lot of the time. The Buddha said, with our thoughts, we make the world. With our thoughts, we make the world. What if we said in those same situations, maybe I'll be good at this, who knows? I can't tell what she's thinking, maybe I'll ask her. My friends must be very busy with their own lives and struggles this week. Maybe I'll send one of them a card and let them know I'm thinking about them. I bet that person loves their kids like I love mine. My life is good because I can look at the moon every night and it's always different. This is a challenge that many others have too. I'm feeling like he should have called me. Maybe I'll call him. Questioning the validity of our own thoughts and doing something different with them instead of doubling down on our well-worn narrative about our life is something that Tony and Zen practitioners call cutting off the mind road. Cutting off the mind road. Now, Tony has 2 children, and sometimes when they haven't been in touch for a while, she starts asking herself, why don't they contact me? And her thoughts start telling her, they'd like me better if I wasn't sick. I bore them. And so when these thoughts start bubbling up, instead of stewing in them like she used to do, she immediately calls one of them. The results are always uplifting, she says, and never fail to alleviate the suffering brought on by the proliferation of the thoughts that weren't true. When I contact my children, we talk about what they've been up to. We talk about my grandchildren. We share common experiences, maybe a movie or a sporting event on TV that we've both seen. They may ask my advice. It always becomes clear that as we're talking that they have been thinking about me. Sometimes it turns out that they've been very busy. Sometimes it turns out that they've been sick themselves. So cutting off the mind road is something that we can all practice, even if we are not ill. And here's another one. Finding joy in the life you can no longer lead. So in a more expansive sense, it's called being happy for others. I listened to a Brene Brown talk about this the other day, and there's actually a German word for it that I had never heard before, and it's the opposite of a word that many of us have learned, which is Schadenfreude, finding joy in the suffering of others. But this is different. This is Freudenfreude, which means finding joy in the joy of others. Now, we are human, right? So joy at someone else's good fortune often starts to mingle with envy. Managing to balance between these two contradictory aspects of our nature is an important element of social intelligence. And it's something that we can grow. But it's also something that's really hard to do when we are depressed. In a recent study, undergraduates with mild depression scored lower on the Freudenfreude scale and higher on the Schadenfreude scale. It's hard to be happy for others when you are sad. Or maybe we are sad in part because we lack access to the vicarious joy experienced when those around us are thriving. Depression is currently the leading cause of ill health and disability worldwide. Now, sometimes the solution to this is medication. Honestly, no amount of meditation and mindfulness is going to help when the chemicals in our brains are completely unbalanced. Sometimes we need to get that sorted before we do any sort of practices to grow our Freudenfreude muscles. I want to acknowledge that. Buddhists call Freudenfreude something else. They call it empathetic joy. Cultivating empathetic joy has been central to coming to terms with the life she can no longer lead, Tony says. Now, at first, feeling joyful just because others were happy was a sheer act of will. I'd learned that other people were going to the Mendocino coast, she said, which used to be a favorite haunt for Tony and me, and envy would rear its ugly head. So I'd have to think of this practice and try to feel happy about it, silently saying, "So nice that they'll be seeing the ocean." But I'd be saying it through gritted teeth. It felt like fake joy. But she stuck with the practice, and slowly, fake joy began to turn into genuine joy. But it's not easy. And that's why it's a practice. Envy arises when we want what others have or can do. And resentment arises if we believe that we're not getting it because of some perceived injustice in the world. And envy and resentment are powerful emotions. She remembers one incident in particular when her husband had bought tickets for himself and their granddaughter Malia to go see Fiddler on the Roof. This story was special to Tony because of how her father's family had immigrated from modern-day Ukraine to the United States in the early 1900s because of the pogroms against Jews. This play was her family's story, and she wanted to be the one to take Malia to see it. Instead of feeling happy about their plans, she felt envy and resentment. She felt like she was the victim of a terrible injustice because she was too sick to travel and they were going. "It's not fair," she protested to herself. No, with effort, she was able to turn her misery around. She started by evoking self-compassion for how hard it was not to be able to take her granddaughter to see the play. Being kind to herself in this way enabled her to drop the painful stories she was spinning about how unfair her life was. It also made it easier to look at their plans through her husband and granddaughter's eyes and reflect on how they wouldn't want their evening at the play to make her unhappy. Then she turned her attention to empathetic joy. At first, she had to pretend. That's okay. It didn't take long for that pretending to turn into genuine joy as she felt happy just knowing that her granddaughter was going to see a musical that is such an important part of her life. And then something special happened. The joy she was feeling made her feel so connected to them that it felt as if she were part of the evening too, as if the two of them were there for all three of them. And after the play, she was able to hear all about it on the phone and ask questions rather than sit in her resentment, which would have ruined not only her night, but also theirs. The 4 sublime states of Buddhism are these: metta, kindness, treating ourselves and others with open-hearted warmth and friendliness. Remember, we practiced that one during our prayer time. Karuna, compassion, reaching out to help alleviate suffering in others as well as ourselves. Mudita, empathetic joy, feeling joyful when others are happy. And upekkha, equanimity, being at peace no matter what our circumstances. Equanimity means not going down the rabbit hole of every emotion that presents itself. It means that when people say unthoughtful things like, "But you don't look sick," or "I wish I had time to be sick," it doesn't have to ruin your day. Toni gets these types of comments all the time. And that's why she loves the phrase, "If there's no one to receive it, the letter is sent back." With a mind that is calm and even-tempered, the insensitive comments of others are just not received. When Toni's dear friend Anne was dying of cancer, she said that almost every visitor she had arrived with some type of cure in hand, from special teas to amulets she was supposed to wear around her neck. Anne said that sometimes she just wanted to scream, "I'm in the hands of good doctors. We're doing everything we can to keep me alive. I don't want or need your advice." But she didn't say it because she didn't want to hurt the people who were kind enough to visit. When Anne raised this dilemma in a counseling session, her therapist suggested that she say, "Thank you," and put the item down. And then as soon as the person left, shove it under the bed. It turned out to be just the advice that she needed. The chronically ill face each day not knowing if we'll be able to visit with friends and family, if we can manage a trip outside the house, if we'll have a bad reaction to a new treatment, if a doctor will be considerate or inconsiderate, Toni says. We can't even predict which symptoms will hit us hard on a particular day. So it's difficult to stay calm and serene in these circumstances, she says. We are all on life's roller coaster, whether we are sick or not. And it's hard to stay calm and serene in these circumstances, too. Anything can happen at any time, writer Kate Terwilliger reminds us. Health can become sickness before one knows it. Pain can arise and explode with awesome force. But on the other side, a day out of bed after a day contained, or a few hours of modest discomfort after squirming beneath the weight of radical pain. It's no less true in the emotional realm, she adds. Anything can happen at any time. Things go well, and then they don't. The stars align, and we feel suspended by grace. And then we find ourselves shaken by sudden tectonic shift in the ground that we presumed was solid. Loss follows gain, follows loss. You might not relate to Tony's specific circumstances, but all of us know what it's like to have our day thrown off by unexpected circumstances. Whether it's the driver who cuts us off on the road, putting us in a bad mood, receiving bad news, plans that have to change due to something outside our control, or even the unexpected visit from a dear friend. We all struggle to maintain our equanimity, our calmness in the face of whatever is before us. In How to Be Sick, Tony offers 4 equanimity practices. And the first is, whatever happens, it's okay. She learned this one from a Thai forest monk named Ajahn Jumnian. At a retreat at Spirit Rock, he began to speak to those gathered. When people say, Ajahn, let's go for a beautiful walk, fine, I'll go. If they don't ask, that's fine too. I don't expect a walk to be any more satisfying than sitting alone. It could be hot or windy out there. If people bring me delicious food, great. If they don't, great, I need to diet anyway. If I'm feeling good, that's okay. If I'm feeling sick, that's okay too. It's a great excuse to lie down. Tony scribbled notes on a scrap of paper at the time, never realizing how important they would become years later during her illness. Reading them with her new circumstances in mind, she understood that the essence of equanimity is accepting life as it comes to us, without blaming anything or anyone, including ourselves. And the next practice is letting go even a little. She loves this practice because it allows her to take baby steps in the direction of equanimity. Waiting for the results of a breast cancer test, Tony found herself overcome with worry and fear. First, she practiced a little self-compassion. This is hard, she admitted to herself. Not knowing is scary. It's hard to wait when you are worried and scared. Then she asked herself if she could let go of the worry and fear just a little, since she had no control over the outcome of the tests anyway. And when she let go just a little, the worry and fear lost their tight grip on her, and she could let go a little more. And the third practice is giving in instead of giving up. And the challenge with equanimity is to not let accepting the things the way they are slip into indifference. Indifference turns the serene giving in of things are as they are into the mental pain of giving up, as in things are as they are, so who cares? Unlike giving up, which feels like failure, giving in feels like sweet surrender. Giving up looks like, I don't care what happens. Chronic illness has ruined my life. Giving in looks like, yes, I am frustrated and sad at times that I'm not in good health. But a good life can take many forms, so let me think about what I can do that's within my limitations. And the last equanimity practice is accepting loss. Tony was watching an interview on TV one day with the actress Susan St. James. Now, 3 weeks before the interview, Susan's 14-year-old son, Teddy, was killed in a plane crash. And her husband and son were seriously injured, and several of the crew members died. Now, in the interview, St. James talked about how close she was to Teddy because he was her youngest child and the only one still living at home. They were best friends. Now, Tony remembers the moment in the interview when, emanating deep calm, the actress made the most astonishing comment. His was a life that lasted 14 years. her words and the serenity with which she somehow spoke them entered Tony's heart that day and never left. Now, when she feels herself mourning her lost career as a law professor or a lost friendship, she says to herself, "This was a career that lasted 20 years," or "This was a friendship that lasted 25 years. And when you just can't do that, when you just can't accept the hard thing, accept that. With a forgiving mind, say to yourself, "That's okay. I'll try again tomorrow." Pain is a clarifying experience, says Kate Terlinger. Before its power, every petty neurosis and trivial complaint evaporates. You want only for it to stop and for your life to be made good and whole. And at the same time, you realize just how much the body, the one to which you are unavoidably consigned, can hurt. If not this moment, some other. You see that this universal part of human experience can become singularly yours with stunning quickness. And yet, pain is a clarifying experience. It can connect you to others through compassion, can connect you to yourself through introspection. It can connect you to your spiritual journey through practice. Have you ever heard of the term AFGO? Kids, block your ears. Another effing growth experience? That's what chronic illness is. That's what caretaking is. And the thing that I have learned the most through Tony's book and through my own chronic illness is the preciousness of each beautiful thing, each moment not in discomfort, each gift of the day that is accessible to us. For Tony, sometimes this is still watching tennis on television or talking with a friend. For me, that is often time in my garden with my hands in the dirt, or periods of time with no symptoms at all. For you, maybe that is a Sunday morning spent with kindred spirits, or looking up at the moon each night and watching her changes. Now, enlightenment is a high bar, but equanimity is a noble goal, and we have our whole lives to practice it. Using all the tools we know, I'm sure that we can get better at it. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll even be able to say, I have just 2 weeks to live, but it won't affect my practice. Amen, and blessed be. It has become our practice to pose a question based on the theme of the service each week. It could be a topic of sharing over dinner tonight or with friends during the week. If you want to delve into this conversation, we hope you can join us Tuesday at 5 at our Zoom coffee hour. And our question for this week is, what's a tool that helps you find equanimity on life's roller coaster? What's a tool that helps you find equanimity on life's roller coaster? And I'll end with these closing words, which are from Tony's book. It's a poem by Secho Jukin, Zen master and poet from the 11th century. 1735, nothing to rely on, this or any world. Nighttime falls, and the water is flooded with moonlight. Here in the dragon's jaws, many exquisite jewels. Go in peace.